All right, Lisa, thank you again for taking some time to chat with me. Can you
Thank you, Denny.
can you begin by telling us what inspired you to create this film and tell us the story of the iconic Little Richard?
Well, in May 2020, I was finishing another film called All in the Fight for Democracy,
Mhm.
which looks at the struggle for voting rights in America. It was the lockdown. Little Richard passed away, and I was hearing his music all over. So imagine you're in lockdown and you start to hear this joyous music, Tutti Frutti. And I think about being a kid and jumping around and dancing to it with my cousins. But then there's another thing that happened. I started seeing these tributes from Bob Dylan, Elton John, Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. And I was like, what's going on with all of these rock and rollers talking about how important Little Richard was to them?
Mhm.
And there's no feature length doc.
Yeah.
So I started reading, and it was a fascinating history. Like, he wrote a book called The Quasar of Rock. It's like autobiography. But then I started seeing gaps in that story. And it was also like, he's not the most reliable narrator. Wait a minute, there's more. So it just, it's like pulling the string. It's just like more and more and more. And it's music, it's an exploration in American history. It is a story of the recognition that rock and roll owes so much to Black queer creators in that space. And it's a story with all its complexity that had not been told.
Yeah, for sure. And because of some of the contradictions that you kind of came about, is that why you titled this I Am Everything?
No, I think it's more so because I think in Richard, he contains multitudes.
Okay.
He is not monolithic. And so everything is speaking to the vastness of what he is holding.
Yeah, for sure. And Little Richard is someone I knew of, but not much about. And I had no idea that he made such an impact on so many musical geniuses. So, as an artist, filmmaker, and visionary yourself, what kind of impact did he personally make on you?
I think he is um, a great story of not being afraid to speak out
Hmm.
about who you are and what you've created and what you own.
Hmm.
Not to be a shrinking violet, which he was not.
Yeah.
He goes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to induct somebody else, and he turns it into an induction ceremony for himself. He points out people in the audience and says, it's the truth that I'm the king of rock and roll.
Hmm.
You know that you got your style from me. You got your swag from me. That's audacious, but it's also authentic. And I
Yeah.
think leaning into your authentic voice is something that more of us should do.
Definitely, I agree. And I also didn't realize how much he tried to denounce his sexuality throughout his life. How did you want to approach this?
Well, an important framing device for the film is Richard narrates his story.
Hmm.
I gave him the mic, posthumously, of course.
Yeah.
And we did that through archival materials that allows Richard to narrate his story from cradle to grave.
Hmm.
So, Richard is through many decades is on this roller coaster when it comes to his sexuality. And, in the early days, he didn't really speak about being queer.
Hmm.
It's only till he starts making these pronouncements like, oh, I used to be. But what we know through his history is that he dresses in drag as Princess Lavone. Um, he is adopted by artists like Billy Wright and Escarita. So
Hmm.
it is an important part of his story. But then, because of his religious background, he says, wait a minute, I'm a sinner.
Yeah.
I'm leaving this all behind. I'm going to Bible college. I think the Bible college, and pictures of him as a student were so interesting because there was an earnestness
Mhm.
to what he's trying to do. But we know that right around the corner are the sequin suits and, going back to living very differently than he did when he was at Bible college.
Definitely, for sure. Now, I Am Everything premiered at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival. How did that feel, and how was it received by audiences?
Well, it was opening night. It was the first time in 2 years that Sundance was back in person. And I think everyone was so excited that we were not experiencing this film virtually, because
Mhm.
it's such a joy to see it on a screen and to hear the beautiful mix. Um, it was a great celebration of a film that, it took a lot out of me, because when you're telling a big story that's never been told before, to find the right framing and to make certain that I realize the story in a unique way, that I played with the conventions of what a music doc is supposed to be, and that, to quote the Sally Field, they like me, they like the film.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and the I think it's about the Q&As always, to have
Mhm.
that opportunity and to hear people's testimonials and their connection, was so gratifying, for me.
Good, good. And ultimately, what do you hope audiences take away from the film?
Well, that Little Richard is more than a caricature.
Mhm.
It's not just shut up. He's beautifully human.
Mhm.
His contributions go beyond the great music, but as with all transgressive figures, he's given so much to culture, to change, to opportunities in ways that, that he was not able to give to himself, for freedom of expression and of who one can love. I think he planted ripples
Mhm.
that has allowed freedom for many people now.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Which Little Richard song is your absolute favorite?
Hey, I love, and I couldn't get it in the film, Keep a Knockin', but I Can't Come In.
Keep it knocking. Okay.
Okay. Keep a Knockin', the drums at the beginning are the same drums that Led Zeppelin uses in rock and roll.
Okay.
They're big Little Richard fans. Talk about a family tree. But it's also a metaphor, I think, for his life. He was looking for acceptance. He was looking to get in. And I speaks to a struggle
Mhm.
that he experienced.
Definitely, for sure.